The gate in front of me groans open, and the sound alone makes my knees want to buckle. My name is Mira Voss, and in exactly 10 seconds, a creature bred to kill is going to walk into this pit with me, and every alien in the stands above is here to watch how I die. I do not run. There is nowhere to run to. The arena is a circle of black stone, smooth and cold under my bare feet, walled in on every side by rings of seats that climb up into the dark like teeth. Thousands of eyes are on me, not human eyes. Eyes with slit pupils, eyes with no pupils at all, eyes that glow faintly blue in the shadow of the upper galleries. They are not here for justice, they are here for sport. 3 months ago, I did not know any of this existed. 3 months ago, I was still on the colony fields outside what used to be called New Harlow, patching fences and pulling stubborn goats out of mud, before the ships came down out of a clear morning sky, and the world I knew ended in less time than it takes to boil water. The Threxian Dominion did not invade so much as they simply arrived, and by the time anyone understood what was happening, it was already over. They call it pacification. I call it what it is. My parents did not survive the first week. I did not have the luxury of grief. Not really. Not with a rifle at my back and a transport ship waiting to take the rest of us somewhere none of us chose. I ended up here, in the capital pit of a species that has never once looked at humanity as anything other than a curiosity to be catalogued and, when convenient, disposed of. The gate finishes opening and the beast steps out. It is called a Kael'gorath, and even that word barely prepares you for the size of the thing. It stands taller than any bear I have ever seen in an old nature documentary, its body a mass of corded muscle under skin the color of dried blood, plated in places with something like bone armor. Its head is broad and low, built for tearing, with 4 amber eyes set in a ring around a jaw that could close around my whole torso without much effort. Scars run along its shoulders and flanks, old wounds layered over older ones. This is not the first time it has been sent into this pit. It will not be the last, no matter what happens to me in the next few minutes. The crowd noise swells. Somewhere above, I hear laughter, sharp and alien, the kind of sound that makes the hair on my arms stand up even though I cannot understand the language behind it. I have heard the rumors whispered among the other prisoners in the holding cells. Humans are considered soft here, emotional, short-lived and fragile, prone to breaking long before their bodies give out. The Dominion likes to remind conquered worlds of exactly where they stand, by feeding a representative of that world to this creature in front of a paying audience. It is meant to be quick. It is meant to be humiliating. It is meant to prove a point that, frankly, I am tired of other people making about my species, without ever having met one of us up close. The Kael'gorath does not charge immediately. That surprises me, though I do not let it show on my face. Instead, it paces along the far edge of the pit, head low, nostrils flaring, amber eyes fixed on me with the patient, terrible focus of something that has done this many times before and knows exactly how it ends. My heart is slamming so hard against my ribs that I can feel it in my throat. Every instinct screaming inside me says to run, to scream, to do something, anything, other than stand here. But running is what prey does, and prey, I have learned in 3 months of watching how these creatures are trained and handled, is exactly what triggers the final rush. So I do not run. I think, instead of the farm, of a half-starved dog that wandered onto our land the winter before everything fell apart, ribs showing through matted fur, eyes wild with fear and something worse than fear. My father had wanted to call animal control. I had refused. I had sat in the mud of that field for 4 hours, not moving, not reaching, just letting the dog understand that I was not a threat, that stillness did not always mean danger, that not every hand raised toward it was going to hurt it. It took 4 hours. But by sundown, that dog was eating out of my palm. I do not know if the same logic applies to a creature built and trained across 100 worlds to kill on command. I do not know if I am about to make the worst mistake of a very short life. But I have nothing else, no weapon, no plan the handlers would recognize as a plan. Just the one thing that has kept me alive since the day the ships came down, which is the ability to notice what other people, and apparently other species, do not bother to look for. I look at the Kael'gorath's front left leg. There is a mark there, deeper than the others, a puckered ring of scar tissue that circles the limb just above the joint. A chain mark, old, but never fully healed, the kind of wound that comes from being restrained too tightly for too long, over and over, until the skin simply gives up trying to close all the way. I have seen wounds like that before, not on alien monsters, on dogs, on horses, on animals that people convince themselves are simply dangerous, when really they have just never been given a single reason not to be. The crowd is growing restless. Somewhere in the galleries, a horn sounds, low and mournful, the signal, I assume, for the Kael'garath to begin. Its handlers, wherever they are stationed above the pit, must be expecting this to be over within seconds. Instead, I do something that I am fairly certain no offering has ever done in this arena before. I kneel. I lower myself slowly to the black stone, keeping my hands open and visible, my head tilted just slightly downward, not fully lowered, because full submission can read as weakness, and weakness invites a strike, but low enough that my posture says something clear and simple in a language older than any words. I am not a threat. I am not prey trying to flee. I am something else, something the Kael'garath has, perhaps, never encountered in this pit before. The reaction above me is immediate. The laughter stops. I cannot see the faces in the stands from down here, not clearly, but I can feel the shift in the noise, a ripple of confusion spreading outward from wherever the closest seats are. This is not what they paid to see. This is not the script. The Kael'garath stops pacing. Its head swings toward me, all four amber eyes narrowing, and for a long, terrible moment I am certain I have made a fatal miscalculation. The muscles along its shoulders bunch and tighten, the universal warning sign that precedes a strike in nearly every predator I have ever studied, human world or otherwise. I force myself not to flinch. Flinching now would undo everything. I speak instead, quietly, not because I think it understands English, but because the tone matters more than the words, the same way it mattered to that half-starved dog 3 years ago. My voice comes out low, even, unhurried, the exact opposite of the panic clawing up the back of my throat. I do not know what I say. Something about how I am not here to hurt it. Something about how I know what a chain feels like, even if mine were never made of metal. The words do not matter. The steadiness does. The Kael'garath takes a step closer. The crowd above goes almost completely silent now, thousands of alien throats holding their breath at once, waiting to see the moment the beast finally does what it was bred and starved and trained to do. It takes another step. I can feel the heat coming off its body, smell something sharp and metallic underneath the animal musk, the scent of old wounds that have never been properly treated. This close, I can see the details I could not make out from across the pit. The scar tissue along its jaw where a restraint device has clearly been fitted and refitted many times. The way its right shoulder sits slightly lower than its left, an old injury that never healed correctly because no one who owns this creature has ever cared enough to let it heal correctly. It is not simply a monster. It is a weapon that used to be something else, before people decided what it was for. I do not move. I let it come. Its massive head lowers until it is level with mine, close enough now that I could reach out and touch the plated bone along its snout if I wanted to, close enough that one snap of that jaw would end everything I am, and everything I might have been. Its breath is hot and smells of iron. The four amber eyes study me with an intensity that feels less like a predator sizing up a meal, and more like something trying, for the first time in longer than I can imagine, to understand what it is looking at. I hold out one hand, slowly, palm up, the same gesture I used on a starving dog in a muddy field a lifetime ago on a world that no longer exists in the same shape it once did. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the Kael'garath lowers itself. Not all at once. Not smoothly. Its front legs bend first, awkward and stiff from years of confinement in spaces too small for something this size, and then its haunches follow, until the creature that was bred across a dozen conquered worlds to be the final terror faced by the condemned is kneeling in front of me on the black stone floor of its own arena. The silence above us breaks all at once into a roar of confusion and disbelief, alien voices overlapping in languages I cannot follow, but the meaning is clear regardless of translation. Nobody in that gallery has ever seen this happen, not once. Not in the entire history of this pit. I do not move for a long moment, my hand still resting against the warm plated skin of its snout, my own pulse finally beginning to slow now that the immediate threat, at least the threat everyone expected, has not materialized. The Kael'garath makes a low sound in its chest, something between a growl and something softer, something I do not have a word for because I have never heard anything quite like it before. I think, in that strange suspended moment, about all the things nobody bothered to ask about this creature before deciding what it was for. Nobody asked if the chains were too tight. Nobody asked if the wounds ever healed. Nobody asked what happens to something when the only thing it has ever been shown is violence, over and over, until violence becomes the only language it has left. I know that story better than I would like to. I lived a smaller version of it for the last 3 months, in transport ships and holding cells, surrounded by people who never once asked what any of us needed, only what we could be made to do. Above the pit, I can hear voices shouting now, sharper and more urgent than before, and I understand without needing a translator that the handlers are trying to figure out what to do with a spectacle that has stopped being the spectacle they planned. A monster that was supposed to kill me in the first 30 seconds is instead kneeling at my feet in front of an audience of thousands, and there is no protocol anywhere in this empire for what that means. I stand up slowly, keeping my hand against the Kalgarath's snout the entire time, and it does not pull away. If anything, it leans very slightly into the touch, the way that half-starved dog once did after 4 hours of patient stillness, the moment when fear finally gives way to something like trust. I look up at the galleries for the first time since the gate opened, and even from this distance I can see the shapes of alien nobility leaning forward in their seats, some standing entirely, all of them staring down at the pit with an expression I recognize even across the gap between our species. It is the look of people watching something happen that their entire worldview insisted was impossible. They were told humans were fragile, short-lived, emotional in ways that made us weak, easy to conquer, easy to dismiss. Nobody in that gallery considered that the same qualities they mocked might also be the reason a girl from a ruined farm could walk into a killing pit and read pain in a creature that every trained handler in their empire had only ever taught to fear and be feared. A horn sounds again from somewhere above, different from the first, and I hear the mechanical grind of a second gate opening at the far end of the arena. Figures step through it, tall and armored, weapons raised, clearly sent to correct whatever has gone wrong with the day's entertainment. The Kalgarath's head comes up sharply at the sound, and I feel the muscles beneath my hand tense again, not toward me this time, but toward them. I understand, in that instant, something that I do not think anyone standing in this arena, human or otherwise, has fully considered yet. This creature did not kneel because it was defeated. It knelt because, for the first time in longer than it has probably been alive to remember, something approached it without wanting to hurt it or command it. And now something else is walking toward us with weapons raised, and the Kalgarath does not seem inclined to let that happen quietly. I step slightly in front of it without entirely meaning to, one hand still resting against its snout, the other raised toward the approaching handlers in a gesture I hope translates across species as clearly as stillness did a few minutes ago. Stop, wait, nobody needs to get hurt. The handlers slow their approach, weapons still raised but no longer advancing, clearly uncertain how to proceed against a scenario nobody trained them for. Above us, the noise from the galleries has shifted again, no longer simple confusion but something closer to argument, voices rising and falling in disagreement, and I catch enough fragments of translated words drifting down from automated systems near the pit's edge to understand that not everyone up there is unhappy with what just happened. Some of them, it seems, are impressed. Some of them are already placing new bets, not on how quickly the beast will kill me, but on what happens next. I do not know what happens next. I do not know if this changes anything about the 3 months of prisoners still waiting in holding cells behind these walls, or the wider war still being fought on the edges of a solar system I used to call home. I know only that right now, in this exact moment, on this cold black stone floor, an alien creature the Dominion built to be the final proof of human weakness is standing beside me instead of over me, and every single alien in these stands is being forced to reconsider a story they thought was already finished. The handlers lower their weapons first. I do not know if it is an order from somewhere above, or simple hesitation in the face of something none of their training accounted for, but the tips of their rifles drop toward the ground, and the tension in the arena shifts from something sharp and immediate into something more uncertain, more watchful. I keep my hand against the Kalgarath's snout and let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding since the gate first opened. Somewhere far above, past the rings of stunned and murmuring spectators, past the handlers still deciding what to do with a situation that has no protocol, I imagine the story of what just happened here beginning to spread the way stories do, distorted and retold, growing stranger and larger with every telling. A human girl walked into the killing pit expecting to die, and instead the beast knelt. I do not think of myself as anything special. I am not a warrior. I am not a hero out of the stories my father used to tell me before the ships came. I am simply someone who spent enough of her short life learning to notice pain in creatures that everyone else had already decided to be afraid of, and who was desperate enough, and out of options enough, to bet everything on that one small skill instead of running toward a fight I could never have won with force. But watching the stunned silence spreading through galleries built by an empire that has never once doubted its own strength, I understand that this moment is not really about me at all. It is about every assumption they built this arena to prove, cracking open in front of thousands of witnesses who came expecting a very different ending. They wanted a monster to remind the conquered worlds exactly what they were. Instead, standing here with my hand resting against a creature the Dominion spent years teaching to hate everything it touched, I think the monster reminded them of something they forgot to ask a long time ago. Not every predator wants to be one. Sometimes it only takes someone willing to kneel first.